guys, so as per yesterday's requests, I got a lot of requests for everyone wanting to know how I painted this so that you guys can do some quarantine painting yourselves. So you're going to need just stuff that you probably have around the house, something to paint on, some water, just like some paper towel or a rag or something if you're out of paper towel, and a small brush and a big brush. Just use the brushes in proportion to your canvas. So obviously my canvas was quite small, so I have very fine brush to do things like the beak and the feet, and then just a size 2 brush just to sort of give me a little bit more texture and to help me fill in those areas nice and quickly. We're also going to need a palette. For the purposes of this video, I've just used a paper plate that had a plastic coating on the top. Try and avoid using actual paper plates. Things that I've previously used in the past as palettes include Tupperware lids, literally a plate that was covered in Glad wrap, life hack. If you have a proper palette, then obviously use that too. And last but not least, obviously we need some paints. So the paints that I've used for this particular painting are Payne's Grey, Cobalt Blue, a watermelon pink that I had, and a titanium white. But what you really just need is a dark blue, something that's almost grey. You can mix that up yourself, just a bit of whatever sort of a darker blue you have, and a bit of black. Not too much black, but a bit of black. A vibrant blue, a pink, or if you've got a red, you can mix your own pink with a bit of white, and titanium white. So I recommend using titanium white because it's a lot more opaque than perhaps your other whites, and it makes it a lot easier to do some of the parts in this painting. So first thing that we're going to do is just come in with our slightly larger brush, and we're grabbing a lot of water, because if you ever have any issues where the paint just doesn't seem to be quite flowing on the canvas, that probably means that you don't have enough water on your brush. So make sure you've got a good amount of water on your brush, your paint's flowing nicely off your brush, and we just want to do a nice little semicircle and have him facing up. So that's sort of the shape of your bird. Make it in proportion to your canvas, and we just want to continue on and give him a little head. So that's sort of about the top third of your semicircle. We just do another semicircle, and then we want to give him some little fat rolls. So what we're doing is just doing little tiny ones. The painting that I did yesterday, I probably gave him a little bit too bigger fat rolls, and he came across as very chunky, which is kind of cute. But however your little bird is, I'm sure there are birds of all shapes and sizes. Some of them eat too many hamburgers, some of them don't. Now we're going to paint his little tail. So we just want to come off that second fat roll and just work it all the way down so that it's sort of coming into line with his little butt, and just continuing on a little bit from there. And then the next bit is we just want to fill in those shapes that we've just done. So I just filled them in really lightly, and then went over it and made them a little bit darker. It doesn't need to be perfectly dark, just enough that you feel comfortable knowing where everything is. So we're going to now paint just little indications of where we want to put his tail. So I have it coming sort of about just after his last little fat roll off the top there. We're making sure we've got lots of water on our brush, and we're doing big strokes upward. So I made his tail feathers about the same height as his head, maybe a little bit bigger. And now we're going to have a go painting his little feet. So I've switched to my finer brush, making sure that I've got lots of water on my brush, along with lots of paint, so that it flows really smoothly. You can do a few practice strokes on your palette just to see how the paint's flowing off your brush. It's one of the things I recommend. And our first leg is just sort of in line with his little butt, and we're just going up and down to the ground. And I've given him 4 little feet. I think that birds actually only have 3 feet. I'm not sure. I could be wrong there. But my guy could be a little mutated. Doesn't really matter. And then our second leg is almost parallel, but not quite, because life isn't perfect. And we've put him going down and given him little feet. And I've put him at around about the base of that semicircle, sort of the lowest point of that semicircle is where I've put that second foot. Now we're going to do the beak. Now I know the beak's a bit tricky, so we've gone in with our fine brush, once again making sure the paint's flowing well off your brush. And we want to come in sort of around about the top of that first fat roll, about in parallel or in line with that. Now what I've done is I've sort of blended the curve of where that beak meets the head at the top bit and only blended a little bit going down the bottom. So now I've added a little bit of length to my beak because I decided that my bird needed a little bit of a longer beak, but however your beak turns out. So the next thing we're going to do is just add in a little bit of our white to show the indications of where we're going to give him a bit more of a colouring. So just grabbing some of your titanium white, and once again just making sure you've got lots of water on your brush down so that it's just flowing freely. Remember, we can go back over this and make it a bit darker or lighter. If you're adding white, I assume it would be lighter as we go. So starting with his forehead, what we're going to do is just in line with the top of the beak, we're going to make a little teardrop shape where about his cranium is. Then we're going to give him little cheeks. So we go make another sort of teardrop shape just in line with the bottom of his beak. And I've given it a little bit of a point on the end there. Just, you know, my bird likes contouring. He's across the makeup tips, so he's got those well-defined cheekbones going on. Last but not least, we add his little fat roll, and that's just in line with the second fat roll, the top of his tail going there, and it just stretches down and around to about the lowest point of his cheek that we just laid out. Alright, let's add in a little wing. So we want our wing to not quite meet the fat roll, but to get reasonably close. Then we can do the belly. So once again, we don't want our belly to meet the wing just quite yet, and we kind of want it to slowly blend in from the dark blue. So if you've watered down your white a little bit, that might help you make that sort of just gentle, gradual change into white from his neck feathers down to his belly. Alright, so then once that's dry, we can go back in and recolour it over with some lighter white, just to really make those areas stand out quite nicely. It'll mean that when we come in with our light blue, that light blue will really pop, which will be good. So now I'm just going to, while I wait for that to dry, add in a little bit of the ground that he's standing on so that our little bird isn't just sort of floating in mid-air. So all I've done is really watered down that light blue, and I'm just dabbing it on gently, just giving him some ground to stand on. Okay, let's add some nice bright blue colour into our bird. So starting with the forehead, we'll just do sort of around the edges of the forehead, around the bottom. On the cheek, I've painted sort of like a H, where the middle of his cheek is, like a sideways H. And then on the neck, I've pretty much just filled in the entire little neck roll that he has going on, his little fat roll. Now the belly, I painted in the edges of the belly. I actually went over this a little bit later in the video and added in some more white, but you've got to remember that every little bird out there looks a bit different. So if your bird looks different to mine, that's totally okay. So let's throw in a few little bits of blue into the tail as well, making sure there's lots of water on our brush so that our nice upward strokes come through nice and cleanly. Now while our blue is still wet, let's switch to our smaller brush, and we're going to add in some white and blend in those blue bits. So they should still be nice and stark in some points, but they also blend out nicely in other points. So I've just gone into all those areas where we just added blue and just added some white around them, just to sort of blend them in a little bit. By using a little brush, it also gives me a nice little feather texture. And then I'm going to add in a little bit of white to the tail as well. So just a couple of upward strokes to the tail. Alright, so I wait for that to dry, and now we're going to give him some highlights. Because I said this little boy is very much into his makeup tips, so we did the contouring before and now it's time to highlight. So the places that we want to highlight are the top of his forehead, sort of the bit of his cheek where it meets the beak, and maybe a little bit on the edge as well. The top of that fat roll I gave a little bit of white to as well, and the middle of his belly I gave a bit of white to as well. Alright, he's looking pretty good. So it's now time that we want to go back into our dark areas and just make them a little bit darker. So we come in with our fine brush and grab some more of that dark blue that we were using before, and we want to just sort of fill in those darker areas, giving them a little bit of feather-like texture with our small brush, and letting them blend reasonably well into the belly as well. I've added in some more dark spots to his tail and given him some sort of curly little bits coming off the edge of his tail. You know, he doesn't subscribe to perfectly dead straight tails. And a few little butt feathers as well. Just a little indication of his little booty. I've also added in a little bit of shadowing underneath his wing. Alright, now it's time to add in his eye. Eye is the part that often makes them look a little bit derpy, so just be ready for this. So you want to start with a good amount of white on your brush. Make sure that the underlying dark blue has dried, and you just want to come in with a good amount of white on your brush and do a nice little circle right above the middle of his cheek, and it should fit in there nicely where we've got the dark spot going on there. Alright, now while that's drying, let's go in and add a little bit of pink. So you want to get a little bit of your pink or your red, and we want to really mix it in with that white so we get the palest pink that we possibly can. Because remember, he is a bluebird, but he might just have the little indication of some pink going on here. So you can see I really mixed in that pink, so it was really pale. You'll find that even the palest pink still stands out. So I put a little bit on his belly, a little bit on his wing, and a couple of strokes on his tail. I then go in and add very fine strokes of that pink on top of his little legs, just to give him a bit of highlight on his legs so that they're not just flat, and then on the top and the tops of his little beak. Alright, we can now go in and give him a little pupil. So the white should have dried by now, so we just get our little brush and a good amount of that dark blue, and we've just gone on top of that white bit. Now I've got him looking backwards, so he's all looking at us, I suppose. So I've only left the smallest indication of white on that very edge of the left side. Then we can go in, once that's dry, and add in a little teeny tiny dot of white into the top right hand corner of his eye, just to make it seem like its little pupil's got a little bit shine to it. Just the tiniest of littlest of dots. Alright, now's the time that we can go in and make some final changes to our bird. He's looking pretty good. I came in and added a bit more pink to his belly and his tail, because I felt like he needed a little bit more colour in him. And I also just doubled down on his ground around his feet with some more watered down dark blue and a little bit of watered down pink. And there we have it. There's a little bird. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you guys are doing alright with the COVID craziness. And if you did paint a little bird, please send him through. I'd love to see him.